So my article that I originally intended to bring into it was The Complexity of Identity, written by Tatum. In her article, she focuses on the fact that there are many aspects to identifications and like how people identify. And so I wanted to do what she did in her research and have people answer the fill in the blank of the statement, I am blank, and how they would do so. And I thought Logan's response to that was really interesting, as he'd say, I am Logan first, and he'd say, I'm a student athlete, as opposed to like, I am white, I'm middle class, I grew up in Louisiana, that kind of thing. Another thing we talk about is, like, you said you guys don't, like, notice race as much, and I think that's probably a generational thing, like, going down, like, our generation, we don't really.
It definitely is.
It's not, you say it's not present on your sports team, because, like, our generation doesn't really look at that kind of stuff, but, like.
There definitely are still microaggressions on the team, even though it's, like you're saying, a generational thing, which I completely agree with. It's definitely still very present, just some people might not notice it as much.
You said you put on diverse teams, right?
Yes.
Do you think that's been an important part of socializing you to be this way, to stand out against?
I definitely do, because growing up, I played on diverse teams. A lot of the guys that I have noticed like throw out the microaggressions have all played on haven't really been a diverse team before.
We were discussing front stage and backstage racism, and I talked about how he, being from Louisiana, I was like, did you see that a lot? Did you talk out about it? We didn't say front stage and backstage racism, but he got along those lines anyways. He went into detail about how locker room talk is totally different than on the open talk, and then we were like, well, do you think your white friends asserting these microaggressions would be comfortable saying them in front of people?
Athletes that you mentioned back home that are more outspoken off the field in terms of microaggressions, when they throw those around, is that something that you think they would be willing to say in front of, like athletes of color, or is that more of a private thing?
Some of them, yes, they'd be open to say that. And I hate to say that, but that's just how they were raised. A lot of those guys they'll say whatever comes to their mind, and they just really won't think about who it's affecting. So, I mean, it definitely, some of those guys that I think they'd be willing to say it, but others can definitely refrain from saying it. So,
because we have studies that show that white students in particular will speak differently around only white students than they do when around people of color.
No, that's definitely, I could say it's definitely true.
Yes, and so I was wondering if, to your knowledge and your experience, if one was more prevalent than the other.
It's definitely more common in private.
Okay.
I could definitely say that from experiences being around, like when there's a person not of color in the room. I mean, stuff can just be said and no one would be afraid to say it.
We just kind of would like you to talk about how you feel about the NFL protests, specifically Colin Kaepernick.
Did they participate in it?
No participation.
Was it something you weren't allowed to participate in, or was it just something that no one?
It was kind of a known thing, because a lot of the guys that were for it, they had family that was against it. So.
We just kind of would like you to talk about how you feel about the NFL protests as someone who went through the civil rights movement, specifically Colin Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick is a very courageous person and a very honest person. And what he was protesting was the way the police treat black men. That's all he was protesting. It had not a damn thing to do with the flag, and it had not a damn thing to do with citizens. As adult black men, we have to be real careful that we are teaching our children how to handle the psychological warfare that's inflicted on them. Where black men are getting killed and they don't have a gun. You know, the woman that killed the black guy in Tulsa, the policewoman, he was standing in his car, she was standing about 100 yards away, and she felt her life was being threatened, so she blew him away. Black males are the most endangered species in America in terms of human beings.
Craig's discussion right here really provides a very direct tie-in to Tyrone Howard's book about black male students. Craig mentions that he believes that black male students are the most endangered species in America in regards to race, and I think that Howard's book really confirms that. He cites statistics that black males, only 52% of black males will graduate within 4 years, and that number is lower than every other subgroup in America in regards to race and gender. Craig also mentions that he believes one of the big reasons for this is that the standardized tests are really normed towards majorities. Howard takes it a step further to say that a lot of the curriculum and teachers don't really have an understanding of the black culture. That really negates a lot of the stuff they're trying to teach, and that black male students won't get it because their culture isn't being represented. And I think that ties into a few other articles about multicultural education. But with Howard, I think it's really important to recognize that we need to understand different cultures, especially in the black male community, if we want to get those numbers up and don't want only 52% of black males graduating within 4 years.
Black males were being disproportionately put in special ed. And we had a big fight with the school district about putting my grandson in special ed. He was at the Catholic school here, St. John's, and when he was going into 5th grade, my daughter said he needs to be around more minorities, so she put him in Deerfield.
In Craig's stories, one of the things that became evident was listening to things that we know as a school-to-prison pipeline. In that, we saw a snowball effect that happens when boys typically don't test well, get lower grades. Black youth particularly are put into special education. And the snowball happens is that with lower test scores, it becomes lower self-esteem. Kids don't do as well in school, which leads to more truancy, which leads to getting out of education, and thus the snowball effect happens, and it leads us to the school-to-prison pipeline.
If you're going to be teachers, you want to be teachers. Okay, the thing I'm going to tell you is take all the diversity courses you can take. Because when you walk in that classroom, you're walking into a lot of subcultures. You got the dominant culture and you got the subculture. The subcultures have to be aware of the nuances of the dominant culture. If not, then they don't survive.